The night he stole it, I was standing in the wings, my Stratocaster still warm from the final rehearsal set. The last notes of my solo were still ringing in my fingertips like electricity. I didn't know I was about to lose everything I had poured into that melody. We had spent the last 4 months locked in a soundproofed garage, making magic. There were 5 of us in the band, but only 2 that mattered when it came to songwriting, me and River. He was the frontman. I was the riff behind the roar. River had this messy, overgrown confidence about him. Girls followed him after every gig. His hair always looked like he just stepped off a motorcycle. And he could say things like, "We don't rehearse perfection, we rehearse danger," and everyone would eat it up. But he couldn't write a hook to save his life. That was my job. I built the bones of our songs, stitched them with groove, heart and chords that told stories better than any lyric he scribbled on a napkin. We called ourselves Mirage District. It was supposed to be temporary, a placeholder name until we found something better. But nothing better came, and after 2 years, 3 local tours, and a shaky EP release, the name stuck. And so did the tension. River and I started clashing over everything: set lists, tempo, bridge transitions, whose name went first on the credits. But when we were on stage, it melted. Like lightning and steel, we made something dangerous, beautiful. Until he decided he didn't need me anymore. The betrayal didn't come with an explosion. It arrived like a slow-burning fuse. It started with him tweaking our set lists behind my back. Then I caught wind of his solo meetings with management. He stopped inviting me to after-show meetings with promoters. I was stupid. I thought he was just overcompensating for being nervous about our upcoming label showcase. But then came the night at the Mercury. It was supposed to be our big break, 3 A&Rs from Osprey Records in the front row, a full house. I wore the jacket I used to busk in, my lucky boots, my dad's old guitar strap. And when the spotlight hit River, when the crowd roared his name, he launched into the opening song. My song. The solo I wrote at 3 a.m. in my bedroom. And he didn't even look at me when he played it. I stood frozen in the dark, my hand clutching the neck of my guitar like a lifeline. He had stolen the solo note for note, even the pause I left after the 3rd chorus. Even the sustain I held just 2 beats longer than expected. He had memorized it, rehearsed it behind my back, and made it his own. And the crowd went wild. That was the night I walked off stage and out of Mirage District forever. I didn't make a scene, I didn't throw my guitar, I didn't scream, I just walked. Through the back door of the venue, past the alleyway where we used to write lyrics on takeout boxes, and into the cold silence of a world that no longer made sense. What I didn't know then was that River had plans, bigger than just stealing a solo. He had scheduled a meeting with a streaming rep. He was already cutting me out of the back end. 2 weeks later, I saw a teaser on Instagram. New single from River Sloan. Blacklight Cage drops Friday. The solo was the hook, my solo, the one I bled for. And no one knew. Except me. I tried to ignore it. For a while I stayed silent. Got a part-time job teaching guitar to spoiled kids who didn't care. Ate too many noodles. Told myself I was overreacting. But every time I opened Spotify, there it was. Time Job Blacklight Cage. Top 10 indie charts. Then top 5. He booked a tiny tour, then a slightly bigger one. I watched from behind a cracked phone screen as he turned my work into his ascent. It took 3 months for the anger to settle into something else. Resolve. I wasn't going to let him win, not like this, not quietly. But I didn't want revenge in the way people think. I didn't want to slash his tires or sue him. I wanted to do something louder, something permanent. I wanted to outshine him. And that's how the Reckoning sessions were born. I spent every spare dollar I had booking cheap studio time at Nightjar Studios, a tiny, grimy space above a laundromat in North London. The engineer, Kells, was a miracle worker who barely charged me anything because she liked my tone. "You sound like you swallowed a thunderstorm and taught it to sing," she said once, adjusting my mic. I wrote new material, reimagined our old stuff, flipped it inside out, stripped the lyrics, and rebuilt the melodies from raw emotion. I found my own voice, a voice that had been buried under River's spotlight for too long. And then I did something risky. I released a single. Not under my name, not under Mirage District. Under a new moniker, Naj de Gale Winter. It was the name I used to sign sketches in high school, a name that felt like wind and rebirth. The song was called Turned Away from Fire. Quote, I uploaded it to SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Spotify, told no one, not even my closest friends. And in 2 weeks, it hit 10,000 plays. Then 100,000. Then a journalist from AudioThread messaged me, who is Gale Winter, and why does this track sound like Heartbreak Grew Wings? And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't just a shadow of Mirage District. I was the storm they forgot to name. River, of course, didn't know. Not yet. But he would. Because 2 months later, I got the email that changed everything. From Lena Armstrong, Booking Director, Midpoint Arena. Subject, Mirage District Reunion Opener Slot, Solo ACT needed. Hi, Gale. We've been following your recent buzz. We're booking a surprise reunion concert for Mirage District. River Sloan has given clearance. We need a powerful opening act with grit, originality, and emotional punch. You're our first pick. Let us know. And just like that, I had my stage. My solo. My revenge. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. When the cursor blinked on my screen, I realized I was staring at the future, or at least the first glimpse of it. The email from Lena Armstrong lay beneath the subject line as if daring me to respond. I closed my eyes and took a breath. The fluorescent glow of my cramped flat in Shoreditch felt warmer than usual, almost welcoming. The too-thin mattress on the floor creaked under my weight as I shifted, leaning back against the pillows propped against the wall. My guitar case lay open at my feet, the familiar scent of wood and rosin filling the small space. You're our first pick. Those words replayed in my mind like the chorus of a song I couldn't shake. Me, opening for Mirage District's reunion. Me, Gale Winter, sharing a stage with River Sloan, the man who thought he could erase me. The phone buzzed on the rickety desk. A message from Kells. Did you see the email? Yeah, I typed back. My fingers trembled. They want me. Holy shit, she replied. This is it. I shut the laptop and stood, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. The weight of the decision settled in my chest. I'd already booked studio time for my next single, my revenge anthem, as the press would call it. But this was different. This was a stage lined with memories of betrayal. Tonight, I needed a plan. I needed to know exactly what I was walking into. The following morning dawned gray and drizzling as if London itself understood my mood. I pulled on my boots and a battered leather jacket that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. The streets of Shoreditch hummed with the usual weekend energy. Snatches of conversation, buskers warming up, cyclists weaving through traffic. But in my bubble, all of it faded. I headed to Nightjar Studios, my sanctuary. Kells greeted me at the door, her hair dyed a shade of sapphire that made me smile despite myself. Morning, Storm Chaser, she said, unlocking the door. Ready to make noise? Storm's brewing, I murmured, setting my case down. In the control room, the mixing board gleamed under fluorescent lights. There were already traces of our last session, coffee mugs, a discarded drumstick, lyric sheets scattered like confetti. I sat in the producer's chair, fingers brushing the knobs. I need your ear, I said. I can't go in blind. Kells nodded, sliding into her chair behind the console. What do you need to know? I took a deep breath. Everything. Stage layout, running order, equipment, set length. Who's playing bass, drums, everything. She raised an eyebrow. You want specifics. I want to know where I'm vulnerable, and where I can strike. She studied me for a moment, then reached for her tablet. Okay, I'll get you the production writer, and I'll ask my contact at Midpoint to fill in the rest. Thanks, I leaned back, closing my eyes. I don't want to just open. I want to leave them breathless. She nodded, tapping away. 2 days later, I sat in a tiny rehearsal room above a kebab shop, watching the stage plan scroll on my phone. Midpoint Arena was a beast of a venue. Capacity north of 10,000, vaulted ceilings, acoustic panels, multiple balconies. They'd revived it for Mirage District's big night, turning the cavernous space into a cathedral of nostalgia. The stage was bare in the diagram, but I could see it in my mind. A vast expanse flanked by lighting rigs, a catwalk extending into the crowd, Rivers throne-like mic stand center stage. The tech specs showed a polished, familiar setup. Marshall stacks, vintage drums, all the gear River favored. It reeked of comfort and entitlement. They'd given me the opening 30 minutes. 30 minutes to warm up a crowd primed for River's return. 30 minutes to prove that Gail Winter deserved her own spotlight. I tapped the screen to zoom in on the audio patch list. They'd assign me a single line out for vocals, a stereo feed for guitar, and a DI for my synth board. It was a standard indie rock package, nothing extravagant. Perfect. I stood, pacing the narrow room, the sound of kebab orders being yelled through the ceiling vent filtered down. I imagined the roar of 10,000 fans, the heat of the lights, the pulse of the crowd against my feet. Late that afternoon, I walked out into the drizzle, pulling my hood tight. I needed space to think, somewhere I'd walked 100 times but never felt at home. I ended up at the canal, the water dark and calm. I sat on the edge, boots dangling. The reflection of the water shivered under street lamps. What's the set list? I asked myself. I had 5 original tracks, 3 singles, 2 new ones. I needed to decide which would hit first. I wanted to start with a punch, Turned Away from Fire, my debut under Gail Winter. Then maybe a slower build with Reckoning Night, the track about betrayal. Then a surprise, a raw, stripped-down instrumental that hinted at my old Mirage District days but morphed into something new. What about the solo? I needed a moment to remind River, who taught him everything. A guitar solo that climbed like a flame, bright and unyielding, that ended with a half-second pause before the last bend. A nod to the stolen moment. My phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Looking forward to having you on board. Let's grab coffee next week to go over details. I stared at the message. I typed back, "Coffee works, see you Monday." I dropped the phone on the grass. The water lapped against the canal walls, indifferent. Monday couldn't come soon enough. The weekend blurred into midnight rehearsals and morning runs. I practiced every riff, every lyric until they burned under my skin. I recorded demo snippets on my phone, slapping them into folders labeled Gale Live Prep. I enlisted Kells to help design a new light sequence, a swirl of cold blues melting into fiery reds as the set progressed. On Sunday night, I stood in the empty Midpoint Arena, courtesy of an all-access pass Kells had arranged. The stage was set, the audience seats darkened like empty graves. The PA system squawked as she tested microphones. "Okay, Gail, let's hear something." She handed me a mic. I closed my eyes, lifted my Strat, and let the first chord ring. It echoed, pure and sweet. I brought my fingers to the fretboard, sliding into the start of Turned Away from Fire. The notes hung in the air, filling the cavernous space. When I reached the solo, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was Pretty Twine moment. Every bend, every sustain, every subtle vibrato. I held the last note, letting it fade into silence. The PA held it for a beat longer, then cut off. I opened my eyes. The arena returned to cold emptiness. A single light flickered overhead, and in that moment, I knew I was ready. Monday morning, I met Lena at a small cafe across from the arena. She wore a blazer that smelled like ambition and coffee, her clipboard full of notes. "Gail, thanks for coming in," she said, sliding a copy of the event schedule across the table. I glanced at it. Arrival times, tech checks, sound check slots. The lineup, me at 7:30 p.m. sharp, a sudden blackout, then the house lights, and then the Mirage District logo projected behind the drum riser. "You'll have a B-stage mic on the catwalk," she continued, lighting cues 1 through 10, with fog on cue 8. And River wants you, when you finish your final song, to bring the crowd to their feet before he steps out. I paused. Why does he care? She smiled, quoting River's manager. It's all for the moment. He knows a pumped-up crowd feeds his ego. He thinks he controls it. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. One more thing, Lena said. River's been tight-lipped about the set list beyond his new single. He's curating a greatest hits set. Greatest hits. He'd be playing my solo again. And I would beat him at his own game. That night I lay awake, the glow of my phone illuminating my ceiling. I reviewed the set list again. Turned Away from Fire, Reckoning Night, Instrumental Eclipse, Phoenix Rising, Final Reckoning. 5 songs, 30 minutes exactly. I typed a new note. End with reclaimed solo. Pause, ignite. I scrolled through my phone, stopping on a photo from the Mercury show. River mid-solo, crowd cheering. I tapped the screen. That image haunted me. Then I deleted it. I didn't need ghosts. The email dinged at 7 a.m. sharp. Midpoint staff confirming my arrival. My heart pounded in my chest like a kick drum. I rose from my bed. Today was the day. The hours blurred as I packed my gear. Guitars, pedals, picks, extra strings. My phone buzzed with messages of support. Kels's enthusiastic emojis. A text from my sister Lily telling me to go smash it. A voicemail from my producer reminding me to breathe. I left my flat and entered the cool morning air. Shoreditch woke around me. By the time I reached the tube station, I was humming Turned Away from Fire. As I descended onto the platform, I realized something crucial. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming my voice. And tonight, I'd speak louder than ever. The alley behind Midpoint Arena reeked of oil and cold smoke. I stood beneath the edge of the loading dock, clutching the handle of my guitar case, feeling the distant thrum of subwoofers through concrete. You Gail Winter? The voice came from a wiry man in a headset, clipboard in one hand, radio crackling in the other. I nodded. Green Room B, you're in the East Wing. Sound check in 40 minutes. Security will walk you in. A moment later, a massive man in a yellow jacket appeared and gave me a nod that doubled as a command. I followed him through corridors painted black and silver, past crates of lighting gear, through the narrow arteries of the arena that pulsed with anxious energy. The backstage area was a maze of movement. Techs darted between cables and rigging, voices chirped over radios, guitars were being tuned and retuned. Every corner buzzed with the hum of something maze about to happen. Green Room B was a concrete square dressed up with a threadbare couch and a water cooler. A laminated sign on the door read, Gail Winter, Artist. I stepped inside. It was mine, for now. I set the case down gently and peeled off my jacket, revealing the custom stage gear I'd had tailored just for tonight. Black denim, silver hardware, a storm gray leather top that shimmered under the light. My boots were scuffed, deliberate, and comfortable, the same pair I wore the night I wrote my first track. I plugged my phone into the portable speaker and let my own track echo back at me. Reckoning Night. The haunting guitar riff rang out like a heartbeat. It calmed me. Until someone knocked. 3 sharp taps. I opened the door slowly. River Sloane stood there. Same smirk, same hair, same leather jacket he wore the night he stole my solo, only now he wore it like a crown. You got my email, huh? He said. I said nothing. He glanced into the room. Nice digs. I asked them to put you in the East Wing. Better sound insulation. Was that supposed to be a favor? Depends how you look at it. I just figured we should talk before things unfold. I stepped aside. You've got 5 minutes. He walked in like he owned the space, ran a hand through his hair, glanced at my open case. Still playing the Strat, huh? Still stealing solos? He winced, just slightly. Look, Gail, he said, turning to face me. What happened back then? You know it was complicated. The label was breathing down my neck. They wanted a marketable frontman. I didn't think you didn't think is the only part of that sentence that's true. His jaw tensed. I made a mistake. I admit that. No, River. A mistake is forgetting to credit someone on a lyric sheet. You rehearsed my solo behind my back, played it to a label, and branded it as yours. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. He looked at me then, really looked. You're pissed, I get it. But look around. This show is going to be massive. We're in the same room again. That's gotta mean something. It does, I said, my voice steady. It means you finally get to hear what a real artist sounds like. He exhaled through his nose, a dry laugh escaping. You're not going to make this easy, are you? I didn't come here to make it easy. I came to take back the stage. He nodded once, then break a leg. You first. And then he was gone. I closed the door, pressed my forehead to the cool concrete wall, and counted to 10. Kells texted, Stage in 10. They're tuning your lines now, you good? I typed back, I'm ready to burn the sky. The stage was colder than I remembered. A skeletal crew milled around, adjusting cables, testing lights. The seating area beyond the lip of the stage was beginning to fill. Shadows of bodies moving in clusters. Kells stood behind the mixing desk at the side, her face illuminated by a tablet. She gave me a thumbs up. The stage manager walked over. Okay, Gail. 30-minute slot. Lighting cues are preloaded. Mic's hot in 15. You good? I nodded. He handed me a wireless in-ear. Cue comes when the house dims. First song goes live exactly at 7:30. I strapped on my Strat, adjusted the strap, my fingers curled around the fretboard, familiar and warm. The house lights flickered. I took a breath. The countdown began. 7:30 p.m. The crowd roared. I stepped into the light. The first notes of Turned Away from Fire hit like a jolt of caffeine to the bloodstream. The reverb danced off the ceiling. I moved across the stage, fluid and deliberate, as the intros swelled. By the chorus, they were with me, hands in the air, eyes locked. Not one person in that crowd was thinking about River. Second track. Reckoning Night. Quote, I introduced it with a single sentence. This one's for the liars who think they own your silence. The audience went wild. The third song was the instrumental, I Dimmed the Lights. Just me and a single spotlight. Each note built like a whisper, turning into a scream. By the time I bent into the solo, the entire crowd was silent. Not a phone in the air, just breath, just heartbeat. Then came Phoenix Rising. A defiant anthem. My fists in the air, my voice on fire. And then? Final track, Final Reckoning. I stepped to the edge of the stage. The spotlight narrowed. Before I go, I said, breathless, this one's got a solo I once wrote in a garage with a thief. I'm taking it back. The crowd roared. I played it. Note for note. Except this time, I made it mine again. I added slides, ghost bends, a final climb that never existed in the original. I ended it not with a flourish, but with silence. A single, held note that faded into darkness. The crowd erupted. Standing ovation. My in-ears went dead. Kells was screaming over the radio. I unplugged. I bowed once, walked off stage. And as I passed River in the hallway, he said nothing. Because there was nothing left for him to say. I didn't remember walking off stage. Not really. One moment I was finishing that final note, the one that rang like a shot across the past. And the next, I was backstage, my hands still tingling, surrounded by a silence deeper than any roar. Kells found me first. She was running. Holy hell, she gasped, grabbing my shoulders. You torched that stage, Gail. Her eyes were wide, almost teary. I don't know how you kept your cool out there. The crowd was feral. I blinked, feeling the adrenaline crash into me like a freight train. I hadn't taken a breath since the bridge. My throat was raw. My fingers were numb. I leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. They stood, I said quietly. They actually stood. Not just stood, she said, shaking her head. They screamed. They howled. You stopped time. My in-ears still dangled from my collar. I unclipped them slowly, trying to slow my heartbeat. It wasn't pride I felt. It was release, like something unchained inside me had finally broken free. You rewrote history, Kells whispered, live. A production assistant ran by, headset crackling, shouting something about lights going to Q12. Behind us, the sound of River's pre-show intro package played on the massive LED screens. A flash of old Mirage District footage. Us, younger, me in the corner with a half smile and a strat twice the size of my torso. I looked away. I need air, I muttered. Kells nodded. Go, you've earned it. They're not going to forget that set. Outside the arena, the night was cool and vibrating, with the energy of 10,000 people still echoing with music. I stepped around the line of fans clinging to barriers, avoiding the security floodlights. I walked down the side alley, an old habit, and found myself beneath a metal staircase, barely lit by a flickering bulb. I exhaled. My hands trembled. Not from fear, from the sheer power of it. That stage had been mine, every second of it, every note, every scream. I pulled out my phone. It was blowing up. Hundreds of tags, mentions, reposts. My follower count had doubled in an hour. Journalists were already spinning quotes. One headline read, Nimes**, Gail Winter reclaims the stage, rewrites the past. Asterisk. Another, asterisk, Mirage District's reunion, hijacked by a storm named Gale. Asterisk. I opened a video clip. Shaky fan footage of me kneeling at the edge of the stage, wailing the final solo. I watched myself. And for the first time in years, I saw time her again. The girl who used to play for buskers in Camden. The girl who got kicked out of 3 music programs for arguing with professors who couldn't play. The girl who sat in a freezing flat and built a song from heartbreak. She was back. Miss Winter? I turned. A man in a black suit stepped out of the shadows. His earpiece blinked blue. I'm with Osprey Records, he said, holding out a card. Can we talk? I raised an eyebrow. Now? Now! He gestured toward a side door. I glanced at my phone, then followed. Inside, the hallway was quieter. We walked past dark offices, soundproofed lounges, until we reached a small side room with 2 chairs and a view of the side stage. I could hear River playing faintly through the walls. Your set, the man said, sitting opposite me, was one of the most compelling live acts I've seen in 10 years. No tracks, no playback, just raw performance. Thank you, I said carefully. He set a folder on the table. I've been following Gail Winter for a while, but tonight confirmed what I suspected. He slid the folder toward me. Full tour, 40 cities, your own headliner. We'll provide the backing band and production team. You'd retain creative control. I stared. You're serious? Deadly. Quote. I opened the folder. The first page bore my name, the second a projected budget, and the third... Wait, I paused. River doesn't know about this? He smiled. He's not our artist anymore. We dropped him last quarter. Publicly, he still pretends otherwise. But internally, we're done. I leaned back, stunned. You played his solo, he said softly. Better than he ever did. I closed the folder. I'll consider it. He nodded. We'll be in touch. And then he was gone. I returned to my green room, just as River's set ended. I heard the crowd cheer his encore, but it was different. Less explosive, more nostalgic. Like they were remembering something that had already passed. Kells was waiting. You okay? She asked. I nodded. You won, Gail. I didn't come to win, I said. She looked at me, confused. I came to asterisk replace. Asterisk. Back in the green room, my phone buzzed again. A message from Lena. Nice, asterisk. Need to talk. Big development. Asterisk. She arrived 10 minutes later with eyes wide and a laptop open. Gail, she said breathless, you're trending. Not just locally, globally. Asterisk. She turned the screen. #AllWinterLive was now the #2 hashtag worldwide. My TikTok page had exploded. One of the audience members had gone live mid-set. The video had 3.4 million views. Your team's going to need to grow fast, Lena said. I've got press requests piling in. I sat slowly. It didn't feel real. Tomorrow morning, she said, Radio 1 wants you live. Apple wants a digital session. And, wait for it, Glastonbury has asked about a guest slot. I stared at her. Glastonbury? You're a lightning strike, Gail. They want you before it fades. I exhaled. Then let's burn the sky. An hour later, I was in a rideshare back to Shoreditch. My guitar case on my lap. The city blurred past. As we crossed over the river, I stared at the lights dancing across the Thames. This wasn't a comeback. This was a tout de debut. I wasn't the girl who wrote for someone else anymore. I was the headliner. And the world was about to hear every note I hadn't played yet. The morning after the concert, London felt like it had exhaled. I woke to the unfamiliar buzz of my phone vibrating non-stop on the windowsill, where I had tossed it before collapsing face first into bed just past 3 a.m. The flat still smelled like old amps and leather. My guitar case sat open in the corner, the Strat lying across my desk like a weapon left after war. I dragged myself upright, every muscle aching, and blinked into the pale gray light. It was drizzling again. Typical. My phone screen was a chaos of notifications. Mentions. I scrolled with half-lidded eyes, then sat bolt upright. Times BBC Radio 1. Gail Winter shatters the ceiling. Did we just witness the next guitar legend? Asterix. NME. Gail Winter's performance will be remembered as the moment the industry shifted. Nobber, Rolling Stone UK. She didn't just steal the show, she rewrote it. Asterix. And nestled in between all of it, like a snake curling in the grass. Charshapre, River Sloane's official statement. I tapped it. Greater than, I'm proud to have shared the stage with a brilliant musician like Gail. We've always had artistic chemistry, even in tension. Last night wasn't about rivalry. It was about reconnection. Music wins. I snorted. Coward snakes. Reconnection? He stole my work, buried my name, built a career off my melodies. And now he wanted to rewrite the narrative as if we were old friends reuniting under the glow of nostalgia? I set the phone down and stood slowly, stretching. My body screamed from the set. 30 minutes of sprinting across a massive stage, pouring soul into every note, had left me bruised and buzzing. The kettle whistled. I made black tea, sat cross-legged on the floor, and opened my laptop. There were over 90 emails. Kells had already flagged the important ones. There were over music, live session, urgent, Boboator production inquiry, confidential. There were over music, Burl Jimmy Fallon, guest booking, pending. I stared at that last one. Jimmy Fallon. So I hadn't even been able to afford proper strings 6 months ago. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. No, a tornado. Kells was promoted, by me, to full-time creative director. Lena was already assembling a PR team. My Spotify numbers tripled overnight. Turned Away from Fire hit 2 million streams in a week. Suddenly, I had stylists emailing, session players auditioning, labels courting. Even my old guitar professor, who once told me I was technically clumsy and emotionally overinvested, sent a message congratulating me. I ignored that one. The Apple Music session was first. We shot it in a stripped-back white studio, all soft lights and no frills. I performed Reckoning Night, with just a hollow-body Gretsch and a loop pedal. Mid-bridge, I let the loop fade and finished the last verse a cappella. When the final note died, the entire crew clapped. The camera operator had tears in his eyes. "You made it feel like church," he whispered. I smiled. "Good," I said, "because it was a confession." Glastonbury. I didn't sleep the night before. I was only doing a 20-minute guest slot, but the scale of it staggered me. The pyramid stage loomed like a monument to gods I'd once worshipped from behind cracked speakers in tiny bars. The crowd stretched to the horizon. Flags waved like galaxies, and somewhere among them, River Sloane was watching from the hospitality tent. My guest slot was with a rising alt-rock band named North Umbra. They'd been fans of mine before the show, but after that night at Midpoint, they begged me to play with them. I stepped out during their second song. The crowd roared, and when I launched into a fresh version of my solo, the one River had stolen, the roar deepened. Afterward, their drummer pulled me into a hug. "You just made history on our stage," he whispered. I walked off, drenched in sweat and sunlight, the smell of grass and beer and destiny clinging to me like perfume. 2 nights later, I was in New York. Fallon. The dressing room was colder than I expected. Stark white, a fruit tray I didn't touch. Kells paced in the hallway while Lena wrangled producers over the phone. 5 minutes, Ms. Winter, a stagehand said. I glanced in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself at first. Sleek, dark outfit, high ponytail, custom-painted Strat. But when I looked into my own eyes, I saw it. The fire was still there. I stepped onto the stage, blinked under the hot lights, and waited. Fallon announced me with that signature charm. And now, making her U.S. television debut, please welcome Gail Winter. The crowd clapped. The band hit the downbeat. And I played. I played like the world had wronged me. I played like I had something to prove. I played like no one had ever heard a guitar scream before. And when it ended, Jimmy walked over, smiling wide. Gail Winter, everybody. Remember that name. Too late, Jimmy. They already had. The offer came the next morning. From Osprey. Same rep. Different stakes. They wanted to sign me, full contract, tour. 3-album deal. The budget made my heart stutter. But so did the fine print. I was to co-write future material with a panel of seasoned writers. Quote, I would retain creative influence, but not final cut. No. I didn't come this far to compromise. I wrote back. Naiden declined. Respectfully. An hour later, another offer. This time from a boutique label run by a woman named Arya Tal. She sent a personal video message. I started this label because I got sick of watching men rewrite women's music and history. I don't want to manage you, I want to *amplify you. I called her immediately. We talked for 2 hours. By the end, I had my new home. I signed. Full rights, full control, full freedom. We launched with a press release that shook the industry. Snipe Me to Winter signs with RAZORLINE Records for historic creative partnership. And in the fine print, Night Me Mas de Petors Snipe Me to Win Us Needing Me to Wind. Night Me Needy full-length album to arrive Q4. Title, Reclamation. When the announcement hit socials, River finally cracked. He went live. Tried to do a casual QTA. But the comments overwhelmed him. People asked why he hadn't credited me, why he hadn't invited me back, why he'd pretended my solo was his. He ended the stream early. Then deleted it. Then posted a black and white selfie with a caption. Greater than taking time to reflect. Be kind, everyone's human. It got half the engagement his last post did. The silence around his name grew louder. Meanwhile, I recorded. Every day. Every night. In London, LA, Berlin. With Kells at the helm. We built Reclamation like a cathedral. Guitars soaked in velvet distortion. Strings that sounded like heartbreak. Lyrics that peeled skin. Track 3 was a spoken word piece over tremolo guitar. Track 7 featured an 80-year-old gospel singer I met in a Harlem church. Track 11, Echoes of Theft, was the solo. The solo. Only reimagined into a 5-minute instrumental that crescendoed into a crescendo that left engineers weeping. We mixed it for 3 weeks, mastered it on analog tape. The night we finished, I sat in the control room listening as the final notes faded. Silence. Then Kells whispered, "You did it." I didn't reply. I just cried. The album dropped on a Friday. Billboards in Times Square. Launch party in Soho. I wore leather and steel. I walked through crowds like thunder. I stood on the rooftop and stared at the stars. And across the world, people listened. They streamed. They shared. They felt. Reclamation debuted at number 3 in the UK, number 6 in the US, number 1 in indie charts worldwide. And the reviews? Straglamation de reviews, Pitchfork, 9.2, a sonic firestorm of vulnerability and vengeance. *Pro The Guardian. Winter doesn't just reclaim her sound, she reclaims us. **** Rolling Stone. A soloist who dares you to feel everything. I was no longer the girl from the wings. I was the storm on center stage. And I was just getting started. By the end of the first week of the Reclamation tour, I had more bruises on my legs than I had cities on the schedule. They were the good kind. The ones that came from leaping off drum risers, sliding into solos, kneeling at the edge of stages with 5,000 people singing my lyrics back to me. My boots were scuffed beyond saving, my voice, raw, burned and louder than ever. We opened in Manchester, then Paris, then Cologne. Each night the crowd grew. Each night they came from Manaith. No longer the girl in the background. Not a whisper, not a memory, but a force, a gale. My name. They chanted it like a war cry. The first real surprise came backstage in Prague. I was sitting with Kells, both of us cross-legged on the dressing room floor, eating noodles out of takeout boxes. The venue buzzed outside, a low thrum of crew sound-checking. She checked her phone. "You might want to see this." She turned the screen. River Sloane had posted another video. This time, it wasn't live. It was polished, pre-recorded. He sat in a sunlit studio, hair perfectly tousled, wearing a washed-out tee meant to make him seem humble. Greater than, "I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. I've hurt people. Most of all, I hurt someone who was the backbone of our band. Gail Winter didn't just write songs, she gave me my voice, and I never said thank you. So this is me, saying it now, publicly." He held up a notebook. Greater than, "These are the original lyrics to Blacklight Cage." And on the back, her handwritten solo notation. "I kept it all these years. I'm sending it to her today. I hope she believes me." He ended with, "The world deserves her truth, and I'm sorry I tried to bury it." I blinked. Kells said nothing. I kept eating noodles. "You believe it?" she asked finally. "I believe he believes it helps more does Knox. He. Want me to post a response?" "No." "Want to send the notebook back in flames?" I almost smiled. "No." "Then what?" I put down the noodles. "I want to write a song about it." Ugh. It became track 13. We added it halfway through the European leg, built it on the tour bus, recorded it in hotels. Just me, a loop pedal, and a Fender Jazzmaster I'd picked up in Barcelona. It was called Footnote. First verse. Greater than you kept the paper, not the pain. Greater than signed my solo like it was rain. Greater than dropping quiet on your name. Greater than, and drying in my shadow. Bridge. Greater than you can't rewrite what never fades. Greater than you burned the tape but not the blades. Greater than the silence still remembers. They sang the chorus before it was halfway done. The second surprise came from Aria, my label head. She called from LA. "You're not going to like this," she said, "but I need to tell you." "What now?" "River just signed a development deal." I blinked. "With who?" "A startup label called Votive, funded by tech bros. They want him to do a comeback album." "Of course they do." "And he's calling it Refraction." I stared. Reclamation had been built on the idea of light bending through trauma. The title Refraction wasn't just close. It was a deliberate mirror. "They're staging a counter-narrative," Aria said, trying to frame his arc as redemptive. I rubbed my temples. Are they serious? Deadly. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Keep playing, keep living. Win louder. Asterisk. We hit the States like lightning. New York was a blur of interviews, promo shoots, and stage dives. LA was neon and bone heat. Atlanta was sweat and thunder. Every city felt like reclaiming another part of myself. The tour bus became a confession booth. Kels and I fell asleep to playback every night. My guitarist Naomi braided her hair to the rhythm of each night's set. My drummer Vega beat on everything, from walls to pillows to his own chest. We became a family. One night in Portland, we played an old warehouse turned DIY venue. Halfway through the set, the power cut. Everything stopped. The crowd went silent. Then I stepped forward. Acoustic guitar, no mic. I sang Turned Away from Fire, with just the raw crack of my voice in the dark. By the end, the audience lit up their phones. Stars. That moment trended harder than any stage pyrotechnic could. Stars, Gail Winter, unplugged, unstoppable. On the flight to Austin, I read an op-ed. Greater than River Sloane's refraction feels more like reflection of someone else's legacy. While he attempts to rebrand shame into art, Gail Winter has done something far rarer. She's turned pain into sans mémage noque. My phone buzzed. A message from River. Just one sentence. Greater than, they don't cheer for ghosts. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The final leg of the tour took us to Chicago. I stood side stage before the finale, hearing the crowd chant my name, the way they once screamed for River. This time, I let them scream. I walked out, picked up my Strat, and played Footnote in front of 20,000 people. Then I said, "This one's for the girl who lost her solo, and the woman who stole it back." And I launched into a new version of Blacklight Cage. Chimay Mai nonce version. Different chords, new bridge. A final solo that screamed, then wept, then ascended. When it ended, the crowd didn't clap. They roared. They wept. They understood. And I closed my eyes, bowed once, and whispered, "Now you know the truth." I spent the next morning in bed, cocooned in a hotel duvet so thick it muffled the world. Chicago's skyline peeked through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the suite, pale and distant, but I barely registered it. My voice was gone, graveled from 3 encores and a stadium full of screaming voices that weren't mine alone anymore. My left wrist ached from gripping chords too hard. My ribs felt bruised from all the ways I'd held the Strat like armor. But my soul? Clear, wide open, singing. The tour manager, Jules, knocked just before noon. "Gail, press call in 30. "Can we cancel it?" I croaked. A pause. Then, "You've got one caller you might want to take." That got me up. Hair a mess, hoodie 3 sizes too big, I padded to the sitting room barefoot and took the iPad from Jules. The Zoom call loaded. A woman appeared, sharp eyes, buzz cut, black leather blazer. Behind her, bookshelves lined with trophies. She smiled like someone who wasn't used to being ignored. "Gail Winter, I've been chasing this meeting for months." I blinked. "Sorry, who?" "Kayla Rowan. I represent the festival." I frowned. "Which festival?" She grinned. "The festival, the one that books legends." It clicked. I sat down. "We want you headlining next year," she said. "Not an opening act, not a guest slot. We want your name in lights, closing night, prime slot." I swallowed. That was Glastonbury, Coachella, Roskilde. That was Myth. "You in?" she asked. "I'm in." I called Kels. "Pack your bags," I said. "We're not just touring anymore, we're taking the throne." The next leg of the tour felt different. Not because the crowds were louder or the lights brighter, though they were, but because now every venue pulsed with certainty. I wasn't proving myself anymore. I was net delivering. We revamped the set, added a new intro sequence where the screen flashed stolen headlines, The original press from when River had dropped Blacklight Cage and then glitched into the truth. Every show opened with that. Truth as a drum roll. I introduced a new track every week, built on hotel balconies and backstage lounges. One was called Static Confession. Another, Vultures in Vinyl. But the one that made waves? The Front Woman. We debuted it in Toronto. Packed stadium. Lights low. I stepped to the mic alone and said, "This song is about what happens when someone tells you you're not the face of your own story. So you make yourself the cover, asterisk." And then I let the distortion scream. 3 verses, no chorus, just fury turned melody. The bridge? Greater than, he called me difficult. I called it direction. Greater than, he called it drama. I called it art. Greater than, he said you can't lead. Greater than, so I stepped forward. Greater than, now watch me tear down the stage he built on my bones. The video trended #1 for 4 days. Bang. Meanwhile, River dropped his comeback single. Twice removed. The title said everything. It was fine. A shadow of what he once was. It charted modestly. Reviews were polite. Comments were brutal. He tried interviews. Talked about growth, maturity, letting go of ego. But the more he talked, the more the world remembered who he used to be. I watched one clip where he nearly said my name, then stopped. Swallowed it. Back in London, we filmed the live special. A full stadium, cameras everywhere, a crane sweeping above the crowd, drones catching my shadow stretched across the stage. I wore a suit made of shattered mirrors. Every light hit me twice. We opened with Final Reckoning, closed with The Front Woman. I ended by saying, "This show was never about proving a point. It was about pointing to the place where my voice lives now." The camera zoomed. Tears in my eyes. Crowd on their feet. And when it aired a week later, reviews called it the greatest live special since Bowie at Glastonbury. River released a memoir. Set list for redemption. I didn't read it. But fans sent screenshots, one chapter dedicated to me. He called me a fire I couldn't contain, said I was a chapter in his evolution. I released a response track, postscript. Just piano and vocals. Sparse, wounded, proud. The last line? Greater than, you wrote me as a storm. Greater than, but I was always the sky. It hit 1.2 million streams in 24 hours. When the tour ended, we took a month off. Kells disappeared to Iceland to record nature sounds. Vega went home to New Orleans. Naomi launched a solo EP. And I sat in a cottage by the sea. No tech, no noise. Just wind and ink. I wrote. Not for albums, not for tours, for me. Songs about silence, about peace, about not needing revenge to define success. But when I returned, Razorline Records had a surprise. My album had gone platinum. My name? Nominated for 3 Brit Awards, 1 Grammy nod. And Aria said this, "You're no longer chasing the spotlight, Gail, you are it." On a cold December night, I walked past the Mercury Theater, the place River first stole my solo. They had a new marquee. Sixtale Winter, 1 night only. Sold out. I walked inside. Sat in the same wings where I once froze in disbelief. Then stepped out and played that same solo. But this time, they knew whose it was. And they never forgot it again. I turned off the stage lights myself. After the final standing ovation, after the encore where I let the Strat scream until it wept, after the crew had cleared the cables and Naomi had handed me a thermos of peppermint tea with shaking fingers and a grin that said we did it, I walked back to center stage at the Mercury Theater. And I flipped a house switch. 1 click. The lights above dimmed to nothing. I stood in the dark, the kind of dark you earn. Outside, the street hummed with voices. Fans drifting into the cold night with red noses and wide eyes, whispering, singing, some of them crying. I watched them from behind the curtain. One girl had written, "She's the FRONTWOMAN," in eyeliner across her cheeks. Another carried a hand-drawn sign that simply said, "Kimes asterisk. Not stolen anymore, asterisk." I walked slowly back to the green room. Kels was there, cross-legged on the sofa, laptop on her knees, already organizing the next wave of press. She looked up. "You good?" I nodded. My body ached. My voice was frayed, but there was something new inside me now. Stillness. "This one was for me," I said. Kels closed the laptop. Then we moved forward. We didn't start with a new album. We started with a foundation. Literally. We launched the Tarmarslage Reclamation Project Asterisk, a nonprofit dedicated to funding girls' access to instruments, production education, and studio time, especially for those from underrepresented communities. I donated a portion of every ticket, stream, and merch sale. Razorline matched it. Within 3 months, we'd funded music labs in 5 cities. We hosted open mic nights, pop-up mentorship sessions, surprise visits to after-school programs. And one night, in Baltimore, I heard a 12-year-old girl named Maya play a chord progression that stopped me mid-step. I sat beside her. "What is that?" She shrugged. "Just something I heard in my head." I pulled out my phone and hit record. That riff became the spine of my next single. I gave her a co-writing credit. But while I was building, River was unraveling. His label Votive collapsed. A tech scandal involving stolen stem files and ghostwriting leaked. River denied involvement. But screenshots told another story. He posted a note on social media. "Greater than taking time away to recalibrate. Music is still sacred. I need to find my silence." I didn't respond. But I felt something strange. Not triumph. Not pity. Just camisailing distance. Like watching a storm fade over a hill. Beautiful. Dangerous. Gone. I started writing the second album alone. No pressure. No label calls. Just notebooks. Field recordings. The sound of my own footsteps, echoing in unfamiliar towns. One night, in Kyoto, I wrote a song under a paper lantern. Another, in Dublin, by a river. The songs were softer, stranger. They bent genres, used silence as percussion. Kels flew out to hear them. She cried. Aria said, "This is something else entirely." I titled it, Times * Architect *, because I wasn't reclaiming anymore. I was building Ex-Bandmate. We recorded it analog in an old church-turned studio in Oslo. Candles, wood, reverb so long it felt like breathing inside a bell. The lead single, Blueprints for Thunder, used only 4 words. Greater than asterisk, here I stand. My design. The rest was instrumental. It went viral in a week. Not on charts, on dance stages, figure skaters, painters, artists who used it as a canvas. It wasn't a hit. It was a siva seed. Mindermana Paivyapans. We didn't tour it the usual way. We launched The Quiet Rooms *, a series of intimate shows with no phones, no cameras, no press. Just music, breath, light. Each venue had fewer than 200 people. Tickets sold out in minutes. Some cried before I even picked up the guitar. Others closed their eyes and just listened. Some of them were former Mirage District fans. Older now, wiser. They came to see the ghost, but I gave them a cathedral. The final song of every Quiet Room show was the same. No title. No lyrics. Just one note. Held. Sustained. Like forgiveness. It began soft. It grew. And just when it reached the edge of breaking, I let it go. Silence. Not emptiness. Completion. After Oslo, I disappeared for 3 months. No social media, no shows, just writing. I turned 31 in a cabin on the edge of a lake. Built a fire, played no music, just watched the sky change. Kells came to visit on the 3rd day. She brought a USB stick. "You've been nominated," she said. I blinked. For what? All of it. Grammys, Brits, Juno, Polaris, even the Mercury Prize. I laughed. She didn't. "They finally caught up," she said. The night of the Grammys, I wore a suit, stitched with the names of every woman who'd ever mentored me. Hidden in the lining. Some names people knew. Some were girls from the Reclamation Project. Some were ghosts. I won. Record of the Year. Best Rock Album. Best Instrumental Composition. I stood on that stage, statue in hand, cameras flashing. And I said, "This isn't a victory over anyone. It's a reminder that you can leave, lose, rebuild, and still return as more than what they expected." I paused. They called me a backup, a session player, a ghost. Beat. But I was always the architect. The room stood. And I walked off stage into a future only I had written. I turned off the stage lights myself. After the final standing ovation, after the encore where I let the Strat scream until it wept, after the crew had cleared the cables and Naomi had handed me a thermos of peppermint tea with shaking fingers and a grin that said we did it, I walked back to center stage at the Mercury Theater. And I flipped the house switch. One click. The lights above dimmed to nothing. I stood in the dark. The kind of dark you earn. Outside, the street hummed with voices. Fans drifting into the cold night with red noses and wide eyes. Whispering, singing, some of them crying. I watched them from behind the curtain. One girl had written, "She's the FRONTWOMAN," in eyeliner across her cheeks. Another carried a hand-drawn sign that simply said, "Crate asterisk, not stolen anymore, asterisk." I walked slowly back to the green room. Kells was there, cross-legged on the sofa, laptop on her knees, already organizing the next wave of press. She looked up. "You good?" I nodded. My body ached, my voice was frayed. But there was something new inside me now. Stillness. "This one was for me," I said. Kells closed the laptop. "Then we move forward." Quote, "We didn't start with a new album. We started with a foundation." Literally. We launched the Naived Azar Reclamation Project, asterisk, a nonprofit dedicated to funding girls' access to instruments, production education, and studio time, especially for those from underrepresented communities. I donated a portion of every ticket, stream, and merch sale. Razorline matched it. Within 3 months, we'd funded music labs in 5 cities. We hosted open mic nights, pop-up mentorship sessions, surprise visits to after-school programs. And one night in Baltimore, I heard a 12-year-old girl named Maya play a chord progression that stopped me mid-step. I sat beside her. "What is that?" She shrugged. "Just something I heard in my head." I pulled out my phone and hit record. That riff became the spine of my next single. I gave her a co-writing credit. But while I was building, River was unraveling. His label, Votive, collapsed. A tech scandal involving stolen stem files and ghostwriting leaked. River denied involvement, but screenshots told another story. He posted a note on social media. "Greater than taking time away to recalibrate. Music is still sacred. I need to find my silence." I didn't respond. But I felt something strange. Not triumph. Not pity. Just 100 distance. Like watching a storm fade over a hill. Beautiful, dangerous. Gone. I started writing the second album alone. No pressure. No label calls. Just notebooks. Field recordings. The sound of my own footsteps echoing in unfamiliar towns. One night, in Kyoto, I wrote a song under a paper lantern. Another in Dublin by a river. The songs were softer, Stranger, they bent genres, used silence as percussion. Kells flew out to hear them. She cried. Arya said, "This is something else entirely." I titled it, Times * Architect * Time Aster. Because I wasn't reclaiming anymore. I was Palestine building. We recorded it, analog, in an old church-turned studio in Oslo. Candles, wood. Reverb so long it felt like breathing inside a bell. The lead single, Blueprints for Thunder, used only 4 words. Greater than asterisk. Here I stand. My design. The rest was instrumental. It went viral in a week. Not on charts, on dance stages, figure skaters, painters, artists who used it as a canvas. It wasn't a hit. It was a Saipon seed, the Saikum mains. We didn't tour it the usual way. We launched Typerd the Quiet Rooms *, a series of intimate shows with no phones, no cameras, no press. Just music, breath, light. Each venue had fewer than 200 people. Tickets sold out in minutes. Some cried before I even picked up the guitar. Others closed their eyes and just listened. Some of them were former Mirage District fans. Older now, wiser. They came to see the ghost. But I gave them a cathedral. The final song of every Quiet Room show was the same. No title. No lyrics. Just one note. Held. Sustained. Like forgiveness. It began soft. It grew. And just when it reached the edge of breaking, I let it go. Silence. Not emptiness. Completion. After Oslo, I disappeared for 3 months. No social media. No shows. Just writing. I turned 31 in a cabin on the edge of a lake. Built a fire, played no music, just watched the sky change. Kells came to visit on the 3rd day. She brought a USB stick. "You've been nominated," she said. I blinked. For what? All of it. Grammys, Brits, Juno, Polaris. Even the Mercury Prize. I laughed. She didn't. "They finally caught up," she said. The night of the Grammys, I wore a suit stitched with the names of every woman who'd ever mentored me. Hidden in the lining. Some names people knew. Some were girls from the Reclamation Project. Some were ghosts. I won. Record of the Year. Best Rock Album. Best Instrumental Composition. I stood on that stage, statue in hand, cameras flashing. And I said, "This isn't a victory over anyone. It's a true reminder that you can leave, lose, rebuild, and still return as more than what they expected." I paused. They called me a backup, a session player, a ghost. Beat. But I was always the architect. The room stood. And I walked off stage into a future only I had written. The stage was built on glass. Literally. Transparent plexi. Floating above a shallow pool that reflected every light, every movement, every shimmer of fabric and sweat. The venue was in Amsterdam, a renovated art museum turned performance space. Capacity, only 600, but the cameras? Global. This wasn't a concert. It was a broadcast. A statement. A declaration. Times the Architect Sessions, live. The Architect Sessions, live. One take, one night, no audience. Just me, my band, and 30 million people tuning in across the world. I arrived 3 hours early. Hair braided tight, no makeup. Bare arms. Torn denim. Boots worn down to the bone. My Strat had new strings, my setlist had no order. We were filming in real time. What I played, stayed. Kells stood behind the camera rigs, mic pack slung over her shoulder, headphones on. She gave me a nod. I nodded back. No words. First song, Juggle Blueprints for Thunder. We started in darkness. Just a single note, looped. Then bass. Then drums. Then my voice. I didn't sing it. I breathed it. The camera drifted overhead, catching my reflection in the water. Every word vibrated off glass. Every step echoed like footsteps through a cathedral. Second song, Pyre. By the time I hit the bridge. Greater than, if I burned the stage, would you finally see the matches? I heard someone behind the camera whisper, "Holy hell." Good. I wanted them to feel the flame. Third track, Footnote. The camera pushed in close. No cuts, no filters, just my eyes, my fingers, my truth. Fourth, Clap of Vultures in Vinyl. I screamed the final chorus. My mic clipped. We kept it. Because rage doesn't ask for permission. Fifth song, The Front Woman. I changed the final lyric. Greater than, now watch me tear down the stage he built on my bones. Became, greater than, now watch me build a home from what they buried. I smiled when I sang it. Naomi hit the last chord with her head back, eyes closed. Vega threw a drumstick so high it hit a rigging cable. The glass stage shook. We ended with silence. One spotlight. I stepped forward, guitar off, mic in hand. I said, I'm not here because someone gave me a platform. I'm here because I took it back. Beat. And I'm not here to be loud. I'm here to be heard. Fade to black. Files mano, monsers tarman. Mana monsers tarman kamana. It streamed that Friday. Top trend globally within 8 minutes. Critics used words like landmark, revolution, anthemic, spiritual. But fans? Fans just said, times asterisk, she saved me, asterisk, though you, drunzak, prided. And I read every one. The day after, I got a message from Ruth Ennis, the director of Asterisk, The Forgotten Creators. She wrote, Greater than, we're being archived. The series will be preserved by the Library of Congress and added to the British Museum's Music History exhibit. I stared at my screen. Cheers, history. Not just performance. Cheers, proof. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, proof. Cheers. Cheers, proof. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, proof. First, Cheers asked, what happened? I told her. She said, you realize you're not fighting for credit anymore, right? I nodded. You're writing the curriculum. The following month, I was invited to speak at a summit in Lisbon. Topic, the future of authorship. It was me, a dozen tech CEOs, 3 professors, and a blockchain engineer with 2 nose rings and a tattoo of a QR code on her forearm. I stood at the podium and said, authorship isn't just about who signs the bottom of the page, it's about who poured on the first draft. They gave me a standing ovation. I gave them a single slide, a photo of my original solo tab, handwritten, dated. No name. Just one line in pen. Greater than, to be remembered, not recorded. Back home, I visited my old music school. The one where the professor once said I was too visceral. They had added a plaque to the entrance. The Gale Winter Performance Wing meant as I walked inside. Saw a girl sitting on the floor, headphones in, guitar on her lap. I sat beside her. She jumped, pulled her headphones off. I asked, what are you writing? She shrugged. I don't know if it's good. I said, it doesn't have to be good. It has to be yours. Asterisk. She smiled. I handed her a pick from my pocket, a custom one. Said, own ITs. She whispered, I will. I left smiling. The next album, Cathedral of Static, took 2 years. Because I wasn't racing anymore. I was creating. We built an entirely new soundboard, housed in a lighthouse off the coast of Ireland. Recorded guitar tracks in the rain, vocals in abandoned subways, used reverberations from thunder and wind as natural delays. The lead single was silent for its first 12 seconds. Critics thought it was broken, but fans waited. And then it hit. Naps raw, metallic, unapologetic sforznięty. It became the most streamed opening of my career. One night, I got a call from a teenage girl in Nairobi who'd been given a scholarship through the Reclamation Project. She said, "I used to think music was something other people were allowed to do. Now I know it's something I was born to do." I cried. Because that was it. That was everything. And then, I got the final invitation. To headline the festival I once dreamed of. The one that River said I'd never be big enough for. Glastonbury. They gave me the final night. The closing slot. The pyramid stage. And for the first time I didn't feel fear, or fire, or rage. I felt time's home, Dalos. We played 20 songs, one from every chapter. And the final song? Not Blacklight Cage. Not Footnote. It was a new one. Called Asterisk, Skywritten. Asterisk. Just 2 verses. No chorus. Greater than, they buried me under feedback. Greater than, said my silence was consent. Greater than, but I rose from the static. Greater than, with a sky for an instrument. When it ended, I stood at the edge of the stage, looked at the sea of faces, and said, "My name is Gail Winter, and I don't need a solo to prove I was here." The morning after Glastonbury, I woke up to rain tapping the skylight above my bed like a slow metronome. I wasn't in a hotel. Not anymore. I was in my new home, small, stone, tucked into the hills of Wales. A garden outside overgrown with lavender and wild mint. A studio in the back, windows facing a forest that changed colors like moods. Silence when I wanted it. Echoes when I needed them. No stage. No spotlight. Just peace. And the sound of the world not asking anything from me. Glastonbury had closed a loop I hadn't realized was still open. I didn't post for 2 weeks afterward. No tour plans, no press statements. No sudden surprise EPs, just me and my guitars, and the sound of rain. Kells checked in once a day. We didn't talk about music, we sent each other photos of clouds. Book quotes. New teas. Silence. I slept more in those 2 weeks than I had in 2 years. And then, one day, I got a letter. Not an email. A physical letter. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. River Sloane. Busking on a street corner in Paris. Hair longer now, face thinner, eyes closed. Guitar case open in front of him with a hand-scrawled sign that read, "Greater than, not selling a past, just singing what's left." The note on the back simply read, "Greater than, no need to write back, just wanted you to know I'm still listening." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. By September, I began to write again. Not songs. A book. It started as journaling, a way to untangle the years. But it grew. Each chapter braided memory, melody, and the lessons that lived between silence and applause. The working title was Tom's Asterisk. The solo isn't the point. Asterisk. Aria read the first 3 chapters. She called me at 3 a.m. crying. "You have to publish this," she said, "not as a musician, as a Tom map." So we did. We built it like an album. Each chapter was named like a track. Each had a QR code linking to a sound, a riff, a voice memo, a fragment of unreleased melody. It became a sensation. Musicians, survivors, artists, girls with notebooks under their pillows, boys who'd been told their softness was a flaw. They wrote to me. They said, "Times asterisk, now I know how to begin." Aomi moved to Lisbon to open a guitar studio. Vega started scoring films. Kells took a job consulting for a tech startup building AI that ensured songwriting credits were unstealable. And I stayed still. For the first time in my life. Then, one day, Arya called with a whisper. We found it. Found what? The original master tapes of Mirage District's first EP. I froze. Those tapes had vanished after River signed his solo deal. Arya continued. They were mislabeled, buried in a mislabeled crate in a distribution warehouse in Brighton. We have full rights. Your name's on the session log. I drove to London that night. In Razorline's studio, I sat in a dark booth and listened to them. Raw. Crackling. But unmistakably, Farrick's mine. That first solo, the bends, the tiny pause after the third chorus, the moment River had mimicked so well, because he hadn't just heard it, he'd felt it, and buried it. Now it was mine again. Arya asked, "What do you want to do with them?" I stared at the reel. "I want to finish it." We didn't re-release the EP. We re-recorded it, but not as it was, as it should have been. Naomi played bass, Vega on drums. A young singer named Jules, who'd grown up on our music, sang the lead vocals. And me? I played every guitar part, every riff, every solo. No longer in the shadows. The new EP was called Sherms * Ghost Tracks. Dachno Anavan Sherms. The subtitle, What They Thought You'd Never Hear. We released it at midnight with no fanfare. By morning, it was charting in 7 countries. Some said it was revenge. It wasn't. It was correction. I was invited to speak at the UN Women's Cultural Summit that winter. I stood in a marble room, a sea of suits staring up at me. I played one note on a small practice amp, let it ring, then said, "When they tried to silence me, they didn't realize something. You can erase names from credits. You can bury solos in contracts. You can overdub voices. But you can't stop a girl with a chord in her chest and a truth in her fingers. Because even if the world forgets her, the sound remembers." I stepped down. To thunder. One final letter arrived in spring. From River's sister. She wrote, "Greater than he's clean now. He teaches kids guitar at a youth center in Prague. Talks about you sometimes. Not as an enemy, as a compass. Greater than I thought you should know." I folded the letter, put it in the same envelope as the photo of him busking, and stored them both in my guitar case. Not to revisit, but to honor. Even broken things deserve a grave. One last song. Not for an album, not for a tour. Just me. On the porch. In the rain. It was called ***, Still Here. ***, and I played it like a whisper. For no one. And everyone. Part 12 of My Ex-Bandmate Took My Solo. Then I headlined their reunion concert with my own soundtrack. It started again, as it always does, with a single sound. This time, it wasn't my strat, not a drum line, not even a breath caught between chords. It was a piano. A grand one, polished black. Living in the center of an old performance hall in Vienna. I was walking through after hours, following one of the Reclamation Foundation's sponsored showcases when I saw it. Alone, keys gently dusted, the bench tucked under it like it had been waiting. I sat, and without thinking, I played a note, then another. And I remembered. Before guitars, before stolen songs, before River, before I knew what I would become, I had played piano. Back when music wasn't a battleground, just an offering, a language. That night, I stayed until the custodian flicked the lights twice. I bowed, jokingly, to the empty hall and walked out humming something new. I called Kells. I think the next record might not even have a guitar on it. She didn't pause. Good. Scare them again. The next project became something stranger. Not a traditional album. Not a docuseries. Not a memoir. A time stage show. Not Broadway, not West End, not Vegas. something between opera and installation art. A live performance where every note would be composed, deconstructed, and rebuilt in front of the audience. Every lyric projected. Every chord layered live. We titled it Nimes Asterix Echo Architect, Asterix. The script had no dialogue, just stage directions and music prompts. We built it inside a defunct planetarium. The ceiling became the screen. The stage became an altar. I played all instruments. Naomi directed the lights. Vega built percussion using only things found in nature: branches, water bowls, bones. The first night, critics were confused. The second, they were overwhelmed. By the third, tickets were gone. And that's when they called. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We want to induct Mirage District. I sat silent. We understand it's complicated, the representative said gently, but we've reviewed everything: the session credits, the archived demos, the ghost tracks. And frankly, Gail, without your signature, there's no band. I asked for time. I called Aria. She didn't tell me what to do. She just said, whatever you decide, you've already won. Quote, I thought about it for a week. Then I said yes, but with a condition. I would accept the award on Asterix my terms. No reunion. No duets. No speeches from people who once silenced me. Just one guitar. One voice. And the truth. Maite Cock. Induction night. Cleveland. Red carpet. Paparazzi. Fans pressed against velvet ropes. A banner 20 feet high that read, Asterisk, Mirage District, Legacy Beyond Shadows, Asterisk. I walked in wearing the same jacket I wore the night River stole my solo. This time, I wore it as armor. The crowd buzzed as I walked on stage. Naomi behind me, Vega off to the side, Kells in the front row, tears in her eyes. I stepped to the mic, held up the award, and said, thank you for remembering, for listening, for choosing to rewrite what was written wrong. I turned, picked up the Strat, and I played. Not a hit, not a song, just sound. The sound I would have made if no one had ever told me I couldn't. The sound of freedom. The sound of reclamation. After the induction, I disappeared again. Not to retreat. To build. The Reclamation Foundation became something bigger. Global. We partnered with UNESCO, built studios in refugee camps, held songwriting circles in prisons. We trained women in war zones to record lullabies for their children. The sound of survival. One girl in Syria sent me a recording of her playing Footnote on a nylon-stringed guitar missing 2 strings. She said, this is what I have, but it is enough. I recorded a version with her, released it anonymously, and it became a beacon. Then came the movie offer. A studio wanted to adapt my book. I hesitated. They offered actresses, directors, big names. But I said no. Until I met a filmmaker named Danny, a trans woman who'd lost her own credits more times than she could count. She pitched it like this. It's not a biopic, it's a resonance. You won't see you, you'll feel you. I signed on. Not to be seen. To be sung's tuss. Filming took a year. The premiere? Standing ovation, 10 minutes. Danny cried in my arms. The movie? Called Asterisk, The Silence After. Asterisk, the soundtrack? All co-written by girls from the Reclamation Project. I turned 35 in Reykjavik. No party. Just a cabin, an open sky, a bottle of wine, and a fire pit. Naomi flew in. Vega arrived the next morning. We built a song on the roof. Called it Asterisk, Asterisk, North Light. Asterisk. Never released it. Just played it once. Into the sky. Because not every note needs an audience. Some are just for the stars. Then came the call I never expected. River. First time in years. He didn't ask for a collab. didn't offer an apology. He just said, "I'm teaching this girl, 12. Can't read music but plays like she's channeling lightning. Reminds me of someone." I said, "Tell her not to give her solos away." He laughed. "She won't, I made sure." We didn't say goodbye. Just a silence. Not bitter, not broken, just full. Bye, Sha. The final performance of Echo Architect sold out in under 4 minutes. We added one last show. Venue, the old garage where Mirage District started. Capacity, 20. Audience, friends, old bandmates, kids from the foundation. We stripped every song to bone. Played unplugged, unlit. The walls trembled. And at the end, I played that solo. The original. Not updated. Not remixed. Just time as it was. And when I finished, I said, "The silence afterward isn't absence. It's proof the note lived." I don't know if there's a next chapter. I don't know if there needs to be. All I know is this. I was the sound they tried to claim. And I became the echo they couldn't erase. Part 13 of my Ex-Bandmate took my solo. Then I headlined their reunion concert with my own soundtrack. The first time I heard the remix, I didn't know it was mine. I was walking through a small vinyl shop in Montreal, alone. No entourage, hoodie up, just browsing. The store owner had a playlist running overhead. At first, it was ambient, then a lo-fi beat, then something raw. A slow, eerie build with a warped melody I could almost recognize. Then, a guitar bend. A pause. And then my solo. Or, not quite. A distorted, slowed-down sample of it, reversed and drowned in synth. But it was there. Unmistakably, Mesol's tracked. I walked to the counter. "Hey, what track is this?" The clerk, maybe 20, dyed green hair, nose ring, grinned. "Oh, you don't know this one? It's anonymous. Dropped last week. No credits. Just tagged #shoewave. Blew up on alt TikTok." "Can I see the waveform?" He showed me the file. I pulled out my phone, ran it through an old tab I had bookmarked, a fingerprinting tool for instrumental IDs. It lit up immediately. Memtai's asterisk excerpt from Gail Winter's Ghost Tracks solo, track 4. Asterisk. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel flattered. I felt curious. Back in my hotel room, I dug into the tag. #Chowave was a community. Underground. Decentralized. Artists uploading anonymous remixes and samples, layering them into each other, passing them along like whispers. No fame, no names, no ego. Just music speaking to music. I spent 6 hours listening. Some of them had sampled fire, Nike, but not the obvious stuff. They used tuning noises, pick scrapes, harmonics I thought had been buried. It was as if the younger generation had heard me, and then heard inside me. Kels called. I told her. "They're not stealing," she said. "They're communing." Should I shut it down? No. Sue? God, no. Then what? She was silent a moment. Then, respond. The next night, I pulled out an old 4-track recorder. Not the studio gear. Not the high-end board. Just tape. I recorded a 7-minute track using only broken chords, percussive body hits, and a looped whisper, not gone, just echoing. Then I uploaded it anonymously. Tagged, #Chowave, #NoGhosts. The remixers found it in 3 hours. The community exploded. Within a week, 35 remixes. Then 100. Then 1,000. People guessing who the original was. But none of them knew. Because I didn't tell them. Because it wasn't about asterisk me. It was about letting go. Of needing credit. Of needing to prove. Of needing the world to say, asterisk, you made this. Because I knew. And that was enough. Until they called again. Not fans. Not remixers. The Library of Congress. We're launching an archive of echo music. Echo? The genre born from yours. We're naming it after the remix movement. Echo Wave. We want to include your anonymous track. I smiled. Only if you list it as anonymous. They hesitated. You don't want attribution? Not this time. Months passed. I toured a little. Taught workshops. Opened a reclamation studio in Mumbai. Traveled without documenting anything. Then one day, in Barcelona, I heard a street performer playing something I hadn't heard in years. A piano adaptation of Skywritten. Not arranged. Interpreted. She had taken the vocal melody and turned it into a right-hand phrase, with the left hand forming cascading thirds underneath. I stood and listened for 10 minutes. When she finished, I clapped. She smiled. You know that song? I nodded. I wrote it. Her jaw dropped. She stood, hugged me. Tears. She was 16. Self-taught. It saved me, she said. I gave her the pic from my necklace. Now you save someone else. Quote. Kels and I met in Athens to plan the next phase. We sat on a rooftop under string lights and olives, drinking black coffee. What's left? She asked. Not much. That's not true. Then what is? She looked me dead in the eyes. You've changed the industry. Now change the infrastructure. So we did. We launched Times 20 Stauf, the Signal Index, a public, transparent, blockchain-based platform to log musical contributions in real time. Every note, every beat, every lyric, every idea. The motto? Times asterisk, authorship is memory, asterisk. Labels fought it. Then artists rallied. Then labels relented. Within 2 years, Signal Index was standard. Even River joined. Sent me a note. Wish this existed when we started. I replied, me too, but we're starting now. And somewhere along the way, I stopped performing. Not from pain. From fullness. I started circuit curating. Producing. Helping others find the truth in their sound. No spotlights. No applause. Just fingerprints on instruments I didn't play. And every time they credited me, I asked, is it better Tulse with me or because of me? If the latter, I refused credit. Not out of humility, but because the sound was theirs. And that was enough. The last song I ever recorded was a duet with Maya, the girl from Baltimore whose riffs started this rebirth. She was 19 now. Her voice? Liquid fire. The song was called Asterisk, Ghost Hands. The chorus. Greater than, I feel her on the strings, I strum. Greater than a pulse beneath my skin. Greater than, she wrote the song I never heard. Greater than, so I could let it in. It won her a Grammy. She asked me to accept it with her. I said no. She went up alone. But when she got to the mic, she said, thank you, Gail Winter, for not just handing me the mic, but for Gracie listening back, asterisk. And that, I think, was my final act. Not the comeback, not the headline, not even the rewrite, but the echo, the signal, the start. Part 14 of my Ex-Bandmate took my solo. Then I headlined their reunion concert with my own soundtrack. There were no tours anymore. No press junkets. No studio countdowns or midnight drops. But the music never stopped. It just moved inward. Quieter. Richer. Like ink soaking deeper into the paper. I spent my mornings tending a garden I never thought I'd own. The lavender was stubborn, the tomatoes inconsistent. But the wind carried the hum of birds and strings. I set up a small workstation by the window. Just a mic, a field recorder, and an upright piano. No cameras, no audience. I played for the sound, and the sound answered. One day, in the post, came a slim black envelope. No sender. Inside, an invitation. Time asterisk. Sonic memory, an immersive archive experience. Asterisk. Beneath that, in bold. Time asterisk. A space where the sounds that changed history are given back to the people who made them. Asterisk. It listed artists from across the world. Producers, DJs, conductors, protest choirs, whisper poets, a rogue violinist who once played in the middle of a coup. At the bottom, Newtonice Special Honoree, Gail Winter. And beneath that, Newtonice Spees, asterisk, not for what you reclaimed, for what you released. Asterisk. Patcher. I almost didn't go. Not because I was afraid, but because part of me wondered if stepping back in meant stepping back. Kells called. If the mountain is calling you again, she said, maybe it's just to prove you've learned how to climb without climbing over anyone. So I packed one bag, one guitar, a journal with soft pages, and flew. The venue was unlike anything I'd seen. An abandoned observatory turned into a labyrinth of sound. Each dome held a memory. One played field recordings from liberation protests across continents. One let you lie beneath speakers and hear the last heartbeat of extinct instruments. One had a wall of whisper booths. You leaned in and heard voices who'd never made it to vinyl. And in the center dome? My echo. Not me. My echo perdra. They had taken fragments from every phase of my journey. Stray riffs, hidden harmonies, backstage hums, off-mic hums from the Echo Architect sessions, and stitched them into a soundscape. It looped, never the same twice. No lyrics, no tags. Just frequencies. Emotion. Time. I sat inside for an hour. Alone. And I wept. Not from grief. From Sturm recognition, sommed. They asked me to speak at the closing panel. The room was full of creators. Old, young, famous, invisible. All of them humming with the same question. What comes next? I stepped to the mic, looked at them all, and said, there's a point where you realize the world is not asking for a louder voice. It's asking for a truer one. Silence. Then I added, and if you lose your name in the noise, let the sound carry it home. Afterward, a small girl approached me. 10, maybe. She held a crumpled paper in her hands. This is for you, she said. I unfolded it. A drawing. Me, on a stage, but instead of spotlights, there were birds. Each bird was holding a note. Above it, in big, crooked letters, Times asterisk Gale made the music fly. Asterisk. I knelt, took her hand. What's your name? She said, I haven't decided yet, but I know it will sound loud. I smiled. Then it will be perfect. When I flew home, I didn't write anything for a month. Instead, I listened. To storms. To silence. To the rhythm of people existing without audience. I walked into a record store and found a shelf labeled asterisk, uncredited masters. I opened a sleeve, found liner notes listing engineers, background singers, session players, all women, all named. That shelf hadn't existed before, but now it did, because we built it. Brick by echo by flame. I got one final request. From the Royal Conservatory of Music in the UK. They were starting a new department. Sound studies. Not music. Sounds tapainsnаю. Beyond genre. Beyond industry. They asked if I'd teach a seminar. I said yes. My first class had 12 students. I asked them to close their eyes. And I said, when you've lost your place in the song, don't panic. Just go back to the note that made you feel something. They all smiled. One boy whispered, "Mine was a heartbeat." Another said, "Mine was my grandmother's spoon in a mixing bowl." And we built from there. 12 compositions. No rules, no time signatures, just origin. By the end of the semester, they played their final projects in a candlelit hall. No applause. Only nods. Only gratitude. Back home, I watched the moon through the cracked window. The Strat rested in its case. The piano, silent. The garden overgrown. But I didn't trim it. Because sometimes things are beautiful, type art wild. Like a song you don't capture. Only carry. And I carried it. Still do. Always will. Part 15, final of My Ex-Bandmate Took My Solo. Then I headlined their reunion concert with my own soundtrack. It was never supposed to end on a stage. But maybe it was always going to end ×1. Not with a solo, but with a room full of people who had waited to hear something they didn't know they needed. The final performance came as an accident. I hadn't booked a show in 2 years, no announcement, no build-up. I was back in Shoreditch for a reclamation event, an art fair, not even music-centered, when a girl named Denny tugged on my sleeve. "We've got a stage next door," she said, breathless, barely 19. "Our headliner canceled. We're just doing back-to-back acoustic. You want in?" I laughed. "I didn't bring anything." She said, "You don't need to." So I walked next door. The space was tiny, concrete walls, folding chairs, a mic that screeched every third time it was touched. I stood behind it. My boots were muddy, my voice was unplanned. But I sang. One song. A new one. Not written in a studio. Not composed in silence. Written the way music should be, by living. The lyrics weren't final. They were a goodbye. And not. They said, "Greater than, I walked through fire, / not to burn, but to light. Greater than a road you could walk, / when they dimmed your fight. Greater than I bent the note, / not to break the sound. Greater than, but to remind you, fudge what it means to be found." No one clapped at first. Then one person. Then 5. Then all. Not explosive, but holy. Like breath being released. Like silence saying, "Chalks, we hear you. Knox, we hear you." I didn't know that video would go viral. Denny uploaded it. No filter. No title. Just, asterisk, she came back. Just for this. Asterisk. And the world watched. Not because it was flawless, but because it was Torres Isas. A week later, a letter arrived from River. Typed. Signed by hand. Greater than Gale. Greater than, I don't expect a reply. I just wanted to say thank you. Greater than not for forgiving me, but for turpentine moving on without erasing me. Greater than I used to think music was about legacy, about proof. Greater than, but I see now, the sound you leave in someone else's chest is louder than any stage. Greater than I teach now, quiet kids, loud ones who break strings trying to find their voice. Greater than every time I see one look up, really look, I think about you. Greater than you didn't just play. You unlocked, meddelt. Greater than, and now, so do they. Greater than, so do I. Greater than, thank you. Greater than always. Greater than River. I cried reading it. Not because it was healing, but because it didn't have to be. Because time had done what time does best. Carved clarity from the noise. The reclamation project was in 60 countries by then. We opened a residency program. Each fellow got 12 weeks, 1 studio, and 0 pressure. Some emerged with albums. Some with silence. All emerged with something they'd never had before. Terminological permission. To create without expectation. To exist beyond credits. To echo. On my 40th birthday, I got a call from the British Museum. They were building an exhibit. Nice asterisk, women who rewired the sound. Asterisk, they wanted my first Strat. The one from that first solo. I sent it, but not polished. Not repaired. As it was, scuffed, cracked near the jack, sticker half peeled off. Because that's how the truth sounded. Not flawless. Kern steak sangnaz hundreds nas. I did one final interview. Radio, live. The host asked, "What advice would you give the version of you who walked off stage the night your solo was stolen?" I said, "Don't rush." The silence isn't absence. It's asterisk waiting. And when it's time, you'll fill it with something no one else can play. Recorded piece wasn't music. It was a letter. Read aloud. Set to a heartbeat. It said, greater than if you're reading this. Greater than if you've ever been turned down. Greater than turned away. Greater than silenced. Greater than sidelined. Greater than miscredited. Greater than or forgotten. Greater than know this. Greater than you are the origin. Greater than you are the architect. Greater than, and no one can play your note but you. Greater than play it loud. Greater than or soft. Greater than or not at all. Greater than until you are ready. Greater than but no. Greater than it's yours. Greater than it always was. Bald. So here's how it ends. Not with thunder, but with resonance. Not with applause, but with a breath. Not with a spotlight, but with a sky full of them. Each one a girl holding a guitar, or a keyboard, or a mic, or a notebook, or nothing but a truth that no one has ever heard. Yet. But they will, because I did. And now you will. And the silence after? That's not the end. That's the space where someone else begins. And that is the loudest sound of all. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.